Welcome to SVG-TV News for Thursday, May 7th, 2020. I am Rochelle Batiste with the details. Minister of Health, Wellness and the Environment, Luke Browne, says there is currently no community transmission of COVID-19 in SVG. He was addressing a press conference today held to update the nation on the current situation as it relates to COVID-19. So far, there are 17 confirmed cases of the virus in the country, 8 active cases and 9 recovered. At today's press conference, the health minister said with the discovery of a cluster of 5 cases in a specific community, health professionals believe the full extent of the cluster has been determined after a targeted intervention of aggressive testing, contact tracing and clinical support. He used the opportunity to distinguish between community transmission and clusters of cases.
Provided for clusters is where this is a scenario where most cases of local transmission are linked to chains of transmission, and I think that has been established here. But very importantly too, community transmission is described as a situation where there are outbreaks with the inability to relate confirmed cases through chains of transmission for a large number of cases, or by increasing positive tests through samples, routine systematic testing of respiratory samples from established laboratories. That's the testing of samples that they refer to. So in St. Vincent, we do not have outbreaks with the inability to relate confirmed cases through chains of transmission for a large number of cases, which is why we said that we have local transmission here with the incidence of some clusters.
Many countries around the world, including here in the Caribbean region, have been on lockdown to help to prevent the spread of COVID-19. And Minister Browne told the news conference today that the World Health Organization, the WHO, recommends 6 things to be in place before the easing of lockdowns, which include the control of the spread of COVID-19 to the level of sporadic cases or clusters of cases, all from known contacts, and importations, sufficient public health workforce and health system capacity. The health minister said though SVG has not been in a state of total lockdown, the country continues to meet the necessary benchmarks.
Outbreak risk in high vulnerability settings are minimized, and we have done work in that regard. 4th, preventative measures are established in workplaces, and I think that if you go through St. Vincent and the Grenadines, you'll see some examples of the implementation of preventative measures. 5th, manage the risk of exporting and importing cases from communities with high risk of transmission. That is already more or less addressed through what we have by virtue of quarantine arrangements and other arrangements. And 6, communities are fully engaged, and we continue to place emphasis on community outreach activities so individuals have information on the basis of which they could make sound decisions. So this being the case, it means that we could assess risk on an ongoing basis and in relation to particular activities and make a determination on how we should proceed in country.
Testing continues to be recommended as a key activity in the fight against COVID-19, with the PCR and rapid testing available to health authorities. Chief Medical Officer Dr. Simone Kiza Beach said the rapid tests were used as part of screening and contact tracing, with persons who receive a positive rapid test also receive a PCR test. She said more rapid tests will be done as required.
In some situations, okay? So, for example, we have 183 rapids, but then we moved on and we did we have 137 PCR tests. However, remember we were doing PCR tests before we started doing rapids, and we have continued to do PCRs coming out of rapids. So we can do the breakdown, but I won't be able to tell you today. So for example, also we did screening on, say, persons who came in from somewhere, those persons would have rapids and not necessarily go on to the PCR.
So the higher number would be the number of rapid tests?
Gradually. Because I'm just saying, 178 now, 183 now, okay? 183 now. But, and as we go on, that's going to get higher and higher and higher. Because initially we were just doing PCR.
Infectious disease specialist Dr. Josie Davy took the opportunity at today's news conference to share some insight into what the PCR tests look for and why a person may continue to test positive for the virus.
As we know, a lot is still not entirely known about COVID-19. It depends on the testing modality that one can use. So what we're doing, we're using PCR to really have someone declare negative. The modality of PCR is looking for the genetic material of the virus and whether there is some viral debris. By that we mean if there's anything left behind of the virus, there's a huge possibility that that person may continue to test positive. Are they still infectious? More than likely not, but just because of the sensitivity of the test, that's why they would remain testing positive. And this may not hold true for everyone. Will they remain under observation until they're negative? Yes, they will remain under observation.
Social distancing continues to be recommended as part of efforts to stop the spread of COVID-19. However, there are several services which require close contact. Answering a question on this very issue, Dr. Davies said, in this situation, the use of a face mask is also recommended.
For those services, there's a close contact. Because you can't imagine going to your hairdresser and she's here and you're all the way out there, your hair would not get done properly. So for persons in very close contact, it's recommended that both persons wear facial coverings, whether it's the cloth mask that is prepared at home, but remember for protection, both persons have to be wearing the cloth mask. So it is recommended.
In reference to the reopening of schools, the health minister said the final decision will be made by the Ministry of Education. However, consideration is being given to do so in phases. Firstly, with students who will be taking external examinations.
And I think ultimately the final decision on the reopening of schools will be made on the recommendation of the Ministry of Education, the absolute recommendation. There was a discussion that took us in the direction of getting that recommendation, and I think that what is possible to be said at this moment is that we're looking at a return to school that first of all takes into consideration students who are doing external examinations, like students who are at the fifth form level, and to an extent as well students who are, well, this is an external exam too, the CPEA, students who are in grade 6. So they're hoping to start with the return of these students and possibly before the end of the month, and then they will roll out a full reopening program shortly thereafter. But I should make the point as well, as many of you may already know, that classes are still going on right now through the electronic mechanisms that have been established by the Ministry of Education. But stay tuned, and I'm sure that more information on this particular question will come to light in the not too distant future.
Medical Officer Roger Duncan said there are actions which the Ministry of Education must first consider and follow before the reopening of schools can take place.
We are very reluctant to deal in absolutes when it comes to this, so that if you do 1, 2, 3, 4, there's absolute safety within schools. So what we have done is we've outlined a series of mitigating actions that we have advised the Ministry of Education to take. Actions relating to sanitization, access to hand washing, physical distancing on the school compound and so forth.
22 Vincentian workers returned from the British Virgin Islands, the BVI, yesterday at the Argyle International Airport. The group, upon arrival, was welcomed by Chief Medical Officer Dr. Simone Keyser Beach, among other health professionals who walked them through registration and health checks. A news release from the Agency for Public Information said the CMO noted that they had information on these persons prior to arrival in SVG to verify they have intentions, and they also went through a process of determining whether or not their homes were appropriate for quarantine. According to the news release, the CMO disclosed that for persons who did not meet the requirements for home quarantine, the authorities found suitable accommodations for them. It was also noted that before going through immigration at the AIA, the group of returning nationals was registered and basic checks were administered, such as temperature checks. They were also asked about signs and symptoms of COVID-19, which would be cough, fever, shortness of breath, and any possible exposure to anyone who might have been COVID positive. They also had their blood taken for rapid COVID antibody tests, and that the CMO said if during the initial assessment anyone was found to have a temperature, they were swabbed immediately for PCR. Speaking during a press conference today, a Minister of Health, Browne, said of the 22 persons who returned from the BVI yesterday, 18 were allowed to quarantine in their homes or in pre-arranged accommodation for that purpose, and 4 were sent to a quarantine facility. The 2020 hurricane season will start in about 2 weeks' time, and the National Emergency Management Organization, NEMO, is making an appeal to members of the public to ensure they secure their homes and prepare for the 5-month-long season, which is expected to be challenging in light of the COVID-19 pandemic. Director of NEMO, Michelle Forbes, said persons whose homes are not hurricane-ready need to make the necessary arrangements, bearing in mind that the prediction for the year's hurricane season points to increase activities.
Use the time now to prepare your plans. Discuss with your families, your children, what you are going to do for the hurricane season, what you are going to do if a storm is approaching. Do the usual things. We cannot repeat it enough each year. Look at your structure. Is it safe enough to withstand a storm? Is it safe enough to withstand a hurricane? If it is not, you need to make the plans now to stay with family and friends. This year we're going to emphasize a lot in staying with family and friends within your own community because, of course, of the COVID-19 that we also have to bear in mind that we don't want too many persons moving between communities.
Forbes said NEMO representatives have been inspecting shelters to look at what different measures can be implemented in light of the physical and social distancing guidelines for COVID-19.
This year we are going to implement different measures at the emergency shelters in terms of the COVID-19 response, and we will discuss some of those later on, because we want persons to at least be wearing their mask, entering the shelters and stay within your families within the emergency shelters. As I said, we are entering the season with COVID, and we have to put different measures in place now at the emergency shelters, and so therefore we are able to plan better and discuss more as to what kind of arrangements we need to have during this hurricane season. It's different. We continue to operate in a multi-hazard environment, meaning that anything can happen. We have to be prepared for any emergency. We have a pandemic, a worldwide pandemic, along with the natural hazards that we have.
The NEMO director said there are some simple things persons can do in their preparation for the hurricane season, such as inspection of their environment.
And roofs are the first things that tend to go during a very strong storm or hurricane or strong winds. Look at the structure of your roof. Do you have any loose galvanized? Do you your nails or your screws are loose? People tend to overlook that. You may think that your roof is good, but maybe some of the screws may have been loose because we've had some pretty strong winds this year. So you need to check to see whether that they're still quite fastened to the roof. If you can get some hurricane straps, you can get them at the hardware stores. Hurricane straps where you can actually strap down the roof a bit more tighter to ensure that they do not blow off during storm conditions. One of the things we ask persons to look at in your surroundings, you know where you live. First of all, that's what you have. You know where you live. You know if you live below a bank, that you may be facing landslide. If you live near a river, that you may be flooded. So you need to know your location in relation to the particular threats that your community may face.
For the second time in a week, officers from the fire department of the RSVG police force were called out to put out fires in the Dorsetshire Hill area. The first fire yesterday posed a challenge due to the windy conditions and the terrain, which made it difficult for the firefighters to reach the raging fire. A fire officer on site, Sergeant Kevrin Jack, told SVG-TV News it was difficult to contain the fire, which spread through dry bushes away from their reach.
On this fire scene here, as you can see, this is a very challenging area for us because of the wind direction and the wind is against us, the strong breeze and everything. And in this area, there are hills and valleys. The road are very small, the truck cannot have the terrain area and everything, and it is very difficult for us to fight this bushfire here because, again, most of the wind is against us, the wind is strong, and there is no hydrant in the area that we can refill this truck. If we use water from the appliance only hold 300 gallons of water, and if we let out at least 2 length of holes, there is 200 length of holes, all the water going to be in that hole, and if uphill, again, you're not going to get enough water to extinguish this fire. If it's downhill, then it could stand a chance, but how far can these water reach all the way, as you can see, all the way down to this bushfire?
A few days ago, another fire threatened several homes in the area, and luckily it was contained before causing any damage. And while on site, the firefighters got reports of another fire, this time in the Prospect area. Sergeant Jack again appealed to persons to desist from lighting fires at this time and advised persons to soak their homes with water if a fire gets close by.
So we are trying to tell people in the community, try to refrain from lighting this bushfire right about now in this dry area. As you can see, for example, if you light here, this fire might burn here, but you have spot fire come burn and hit in other area, and this other area can ignite as well. So fire can spread by that way. So try refrain from lighting fire. If you want to light fire, light it in small areas and monitor the fire. This fire truck cannot reach this area, so you can't extinguish fire. After this scene here, we're going to visit Prospect on that fire scene. If you look at that area, you have to allow that area to burn up because the fire appliance cannot reach those areas here. So although neighbors in the area can assist by working around their house, so can prevent the spread from these fires.
We must apologize for the poor quality of the audio. Today, there are some 68 fires on record for the year thus far. Minister of Agriculture Saboto Caesar said that he is aware that there is significant reduction in the demand for root crops in Trinidad and Tobago, and a decision will be made by local traffickers to export fortnightly instead of weekly. He was speaking on the matter on the radio program last evening on Star FM.
It was easy for all sectors and subsectors to fit in to this national puzzle. So we will continue to export. I am aware that in Trinidad and Tobago, because of the closure of the restaurants, there's a significant reduction in the demand for root crops. And tomorrow the traffickers are going to make a decision as to whether or not for the upcoming week we are going to skip that week and we're going to go every fortnight to Trinidad and Tobago. However, as it pertains to Barbados and the other countries that we export to, we're going to continue it on a weekly basis.
In regards to CMOS production in the Southern Grenadines, Minister Caesar said that he wants residents in the Southern and Northern Grenadines to be aware that no producer will be left behind, noting that the monies allocated to the agriculture sector from the government's COVID-19 stimulus package will ensure the potential of the blue economy harnessed fully.
In the Grenadines right now, there is a significant increase in the extraction of CMOS. CMOS is sold at $20 per pound. And there's a very lucrative market right now in Miami. And we're exporting from St. Vincent and the Grenadines to Miami on the Amerijet. And it is being moved from Miami, a lot of it, over to California.
Interesting.
Yes, it's very interesting. And I'm going to go down to Myro and to Union Island in the next week and a half, and we're working with Comrade Belmar in Beckway to ensure that the technology is brought up and enhanced there as well, so that persons can get into CMOS cultivation, because there's also that science in the Grenadines.
Is it not?
The Agriculture Minister said that he spoke to the Director of Grenadines Affairs, Edwin Snag, yesterday, who told him that there's been a significant increase in CMOS production, but there are some issues that need to be addressed.
It's a raw CMOS, and it's dried.
Okay.
It's dried, and I'm advised that there are some exporters from the Grenadines that export it directly, and some persons in St. Vincent some persons purchase it and then resell it as well. I know that there's an issue with the salt residue, because you don't have an abundance of water in the Grenadines to wash the CMOS. So that is an issue that we have to address. But I spoke to Comrade Snag up to yesterday, and he said to me that there's a significant increase in the production of CMOS. Something that we're going to also work on coming out of the stimulus package